Shalom, friends. Thank you so much for tuning into Generations at the Table and being a part of this journey. I am so excited to share that Generations at the Table is moving over to its own channel. So if you've loved these episodes and I've loved spending this time with you, be sure to follow us there so that you don't miss a thing. Same heart, same message, brand new channel. I can't wait to see you there. Can you look back and see, oh, that was a painful season. That was a moment of imprisonment. That was a pit moment. That was a moment where I felt betrayed by my brothers, my family. And yet I see that God was using that to position me to be able to carry the calling that God has on my life, on your life, in humility. Those situations that we walk through, those hard places, those are moments of refining. And we get to choose. Are we going to be refined to be better leaders? Are we going to be refined to be better mothers, better fathers, better friends, better family? Or are we going to allow this to make us bitter? Because see, Joseph's life shows us the legacy, the possibility of choice. Hey, this is Megann Marcellino, and I want to welcome you back to Generations at the Table. Thank you so much for pulling up a seat. Today, I want to talk to you about the life and legacy of Joseph and how he was positioned for purpose and how God is positioning you and I for purpose. So I have a special connection to the name of Joseph. I love it because, as many of you know, my dad, Curt Landry, he was adopted, and his given name at birth was Joseph, and he actually would have been the third. And so when we had our first son, I asked Paul, my husband, I said, can we please name him Joseph? Because I wanted to bring that back into our family line. And not only just the name, but the significance of it and the calling behind it and kind of what it meant, like that we're going to take hold of all the purpose that God has for our family, that the men in our family are going to rise up and we are going to walk out that Joseph calling. And so there's a lot that can be learned from Joseph. And it's not just like from the beginning of his dream to the time in Egypt, but how he stewarded his call and how he walked through seasons. And so what I want to talk to you today is about those seasons where we are perhaps feeling hidden, or perhaps we're feeling forgotten, or maybe you're feeling like your gift is not being utilized. We can learn so much from his story as men, as women. Like it is an evergreen story. It is non-changing, and there's just so much to learn. But what can we glean from it, and not only just like hear it and then apply it to our life? So here's what I want to challenge you today. Please listen to this story with me with fresh ears, because I'm sure you've heard it many times. Maybe you've heard the story of Joseph, from your pastor, or read it in your Bible. I mean, you got to be familiar. But the point is, when we listen to it in season, no matter where we are, you're going to see something new. You're going to glean something fresh. You're going to say, oh, this is for me today. I was just listening, preparing for this message, to the story of Joseph this morning while I was getting ready, and I was hearing something new and fresh for right now, for this season, for this moment. So Joseph was positioned for such a time as this, just like Esther. He was in Egypt, but it was not without purpose. This pain that he went through, this imprisonment that he went through, the promotions that he went through, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, was all for purpose. And it was all not only for Joseph's purpose, but for the purpose of the nation to follow. He was not in Egypt by chance. And I think that that's where sometimes we can say like, oh, well, he has the dream, his brothers throw him into a pit, and then he's, captured, all of these different things. It was not by chance. God was divinely ordering Joseph's steps, and God was taking care of Joseph in the good seasons and in the bad seasons, in the seasons of prison and in the seasons of promotion. God was there. God was present. God was taking care of Joseph. So my question for you is this: can you see the hand of God? Can you feel the hand of God in your life when there's those moments where it's like, I feel imprisoned by, maybe it's your circumstances, maybe it's your pain, maybe it's your fear, maybe it's a bad relationship, whatever it is, but can you still see that the hand of God has been evident and that he is still there and he is present with you? And at the same time, can you feel his presence when you are in moments of victory, moments of breakthrough, those mountaintop experiences that we also go through. We can't forget that it's God who got us there, who elevated us from that low place, like Joseph's pit, that elevated us from the pit to the pinnacle, right? That there's that process, but that God is there through all of it, and that none of our journey is wasted. So no matter what you're going through right now, if you are yielding to Him, if you are listening to Him, whether it's a low point or a high point, your journey is not being wasted. Your journey is positioning you on your journey towards destiny. Your exile season, your season of feeling hidden, your season of like Joseph where he may have felt forgotten, that God is using it for good and that God has your best interest at heart. So Joseph's gift for him, his gift of being able to interpret dreams, it made room in front of Pharaoh. It enabled him to be able to come before Pharaoh. It gave him position, right? That way would seem like maybe the end all be all, but it was Joseph's character that enabled him to stay. It was Joseph's character that allowed him to steward the gift that God had given him. See, God can deposit gifts inside of us. I don't know what your gift is. Maybe you have a gift of interpreting dreams. Maybe you have a gift of encouragement. Maybe you have a gift of joy or love. What is a gift in your life? Like, identify one of those right now. How are you stewarding it? Because see, God plants those seeds in our lives. God plants those seeds in our hearts. But are we using them well? Are we using them for ourselves just to further our own dreams and aspirations? Or are we using them to further God's kingdom? So Joseph's ability to interpret dreams was just the door opener. It was not the end of his journey. It was what gave him audience with Pharaoh. But from there, Joseph had to steward his gift, steward his wisdom, and do so from a place of honor. And then what do we want to do? What is our lesson with that? It's like, okay, God has given me a gift. I'm going to steward the gift. I'm going to seek first the kingdom of God. I'm going to seek first His righteousness. I want to advance the kingdom. I want to honor my family. I want to live according to the word. God has given you gifts, but how are you stewarding them? Are they opening doors for you? And then are you taking that open door and elevating yourself? Are you self-promoting, or are you allowing God to promote you? The years of discipline that Joseph went through, the years of, being thrown to the pit and then dealing with the false accusation from Potiphar's wife and being in prison. And then, felt like maybe he was forgotten when he interpreted the dream. All of those seasons, all of that positioned Joseph to carry his calling well. So what in your life has God used you to position you to carry your calling well, to carry out your destiny, and to do so in excellence? Can you look back and see, oh, that was a painful season. That was a moment of imprisonment. That was a pit moment. That was a moment where I felt betrayed by my brothers, my family. And yet I see that God was using that to position me to be able to carry the calling that God has on my life, on your life, in humility. Those situations that we walk through, those hard places, those are moments of refining. And we get to choose. Are we going to be refined to be better leaders? Are we going to be refined to be better mothers, better fathers, better friends, better family? Or are we going to allow this to make us bitter? Because see, Joseph's life shows us the legacy, the possibility of choice. Joseph could have just become bitter and angry and operated in resentment. He could have chosen to forget his gift and not nurture it. He could have chosen all of those things, and this story would have been so different. And yet somehow in the midst, he chose in his mind, he leaned into the Lord, he disciplined himself, regardless of his situation, to press into the gift that had been planted within him, to steward that which God has given him. How are you stewarding what God has planted inside of you? Because see, God has given you purpose. God has given you instruction. God has given you dreams, maybe like Joseph, where we're waiting on them to be fulfilled. But how are you stewarding them? You can be making choices to be getting frustrated with the delay. You could be making choices to be angry. You can choose to be confused and feel like, lean into that chaos and feel abandoned and alone and resentment and why me? Those are all choices. Or you can choose to say, I'm going to wait on the Lord. I'm going to refine. I'm going to allow myself to be refined by these circumstances instead of defined by them in bitterness. All of those choices eventually position us to walk out what God has for us. So Joseph, listen to this. In Genesis 41:16, it says, "So Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, 'It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace.'" Joseph was a humble man, and so he demonstrated humility to us. So would he have been humble if he hadn't gone through all of those trials and tribulations? Probably not, because we know that Jacob loved Joseph and he honored him and he gave him the coat of many colors and he adored him and all of those things. If that Joseph had arrived on the scene in Egypt, he probably would not have been able to operate in the same level of patience and humility that we see demonstrated. But that's not the same Joseph that arrived. The Joseph that arrived was transformed by his experience. He was changed by that which he experienced, and it was in a positive way. And so we can learn that in these seasons of waiting, that we are being refined to become the men and the women that are called to carry out that destiny that is before us, that we have the wisdom to steward it, that we can hold it well, that we're not holding it on to ourselves, that we're not self-promoting, but we're stewarding the gift well. How are you stewarding the gifts that God gave you? You know, I was reading in some of like the biblical commentary, and Joseph waited 22 years. It is estimated that he was 17 years old at the time that he had the dreams of the bowing sheaves, but that it was 22 years later when that dream came to fulfillment and his brothers showed up in Egypt. 22 years, and not just 22 empty years, but 22 years of experience. The pit, the elevating, the promotion, the imprisonment, the interpretation of dreams, the waiting, all of those experiences. But what did they do? They allowed the dream to come to pass, and they allowed it to be in a way that furthered Joseph, that protected Joseph. So remember that no matter what you're going through right now, that the Lord is using it for your good. That the Lord is more interested about who you become at the end of your life and the character that you are developing than just like getting you to the finish line. You know, we've talked some about like the whole like Enneagram thing and like where your motivation is. I'm very much an achiever and I like to just get things done. I want to get it checked off the list. I have been known to add things to my to-do list retroactively so that I can check them off. And I know that that's weird and petty and strange, and I get it, but it's like an endorphin high of, okay, I got something done. And when I can't check it off, it bothers me so much. I feel so frustrated, and I've had to really learn to just like yield that to the Lord, because now as a mom of 4 and working, there are just many days, more days than not, that not everything gets done. And I have to learn to say, okay, all right, it's okay that not everything happened. It's okay that not everything happened the way that I expected it to. But we can see from Joseph that he had to learn patience in that 22 years of waiting. And I'm sure there were some days that things that did not go as expected. Joseph also demonstrates for us gratitude. We see patience, we see humility, and then we see gratitude. I don't think that he would have had the same level of gratitude, that same level of thankfulness, had he not had that life experience. Had he just gone from Jacob's favorite son, adored the coat of many colors, to a place of privilege and influence and elevated positioning, if he hadn't had the pit, the false accusation, the imprisonment, the feeling forgotten. So listen to this. In Genesis 41, verses 51 and 52, he names his children, and he names Manasseh, and he says, "For God has made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. And Ephraim, for God has caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction." These names were memorials of both his pain and his promotion, of the loss and the fruitfulness. So he came out of it and he said, God has caused me to forget, and God has caused me to be fruitful, that I would not remember my pain. Now, did he remember? Of course, but he did not dwell on it. He did not meditate on it. We can learn from Joseph that we must not meditate on those hard seasons. We learn the lessons and we move on, and that God has blessed us and caused us to be fruitful. So his gratitude was not just an afterthought. It was very much part of how he stewarded his gifting. I think if he had appeared in front of Pharaoh Pharaoh and Potiphar and all of these situations, if he had appeared and he came in arrogance and he came in feeling ungrateful and he came in, with like that negative experience, there's no way that he would have been elevated to a place where he was a ruler in Egypt. But he came in wisdom. He came in humility. He came in patience, and he came in from a place of gratitude. And it was those areas in his life, I think, that probably allowed him to shine in excellence. And it was like, this is what's going to elevate you. So how you name your seasons matter. If you look back and you say, man, that was a season of bitterness. That was a season of loss. That was a season of not enough. That was a season of lack. That was a season of pain and affliction. That was a season I was forgotten. Or do you name it, that was a season where I was refined, and now I am carrying that into my future and I am unlocking kingdom destinies. That is a season where I went through fear, but I saw how God was faithful, and now I am a woman of faith. That it was a challenging season with my child, or that was a season that refined me as a parent, and now I can lead in my home better. This was a really hard place in my marriage, or that was a place where we learned some really powerful lessons and we are better for it. You don't have to forget fully the pain of what you went through, but you do need to be able to look back at those situations and see how the Lord used them for your good. How you label your season matters on if you view it strictly from a lens of bitterness, resentment, anger, frustration, or if you can see the good, how God brought you through. How has God brought you through? How has God brought you through those hard times where you felt like I cannot put one foot in front of the other? I do not have the provision. I don't have the bandwidth. I am exhausted. I think that's one thing that's so incredibly beautiful about the rhythm of Sabbath in our life is that we can, go through the week and we can just be absolutely exhausted, and we can feel like there's not any more. There's not more of me that can go around. I'm at my bandwidth. I'm done. I'm spent. And God says, come to me and rest. So if you are finding yourself in that season and you're like, I am so exhausted, I would ask you, are you truly resting? Are you honoring the Lord with your Sabbath? If you're coming to the Lord and you're like, I'm having tremendous financial problems, I am under pressure, I am fearful. Paul and I have been there. We have been there where it just feels like we're not sure exactly how the ends are going to meet. And I'm going to tell you what, 100%, I am convinced that the ends met because we were faithful with our tithes and we were faithful with our offerings. And that those are literally items that we are going to do every week, every month, however you look at that. And every time that the Lord commands us to give at the feast, offers us an opportunity to give, we're going to give. And sometimes it's like, I don't understand how that's going to be. Well, God has given us the ability to give, to put seed in the ground so that when we had need, that harvest would come forth. And so here's the thing, those moments of pressure, whether they're financial, relationship, health, what seeds are you sowing so that you have the harvest that you need in the future? I had a friend once say to me something about kind of their current religious experience and what they were going through. And yeah, this was just easy. And it's easy to go to church on Sunday, and it's easy to do this, and it's easy. But then when they went through a hard place, my question was, well, is the easy carrying you through? Because see, you can just show up for church on Sunday and walk out and go on with your life, but that is not going to be enough when the enemy knocks on your door. That's not going to be enough to carry you through. You need to be in the Word daily. You need to be nurturing your spiritual life in worship. For us and our family, it's that rhythm of Sabbath that keeps us. It's the rhythm of the feast. It's the rhythm of our giving that I truly believe keeps us when the enemy knocks on our door. And don't think that he doesn't, because he does. He knocks on your door with fear, or our door with fear and with lack, or with, like those second guessing yourself. He knocks on our door. Well, what can we learn from Joseph? When the enemy knocked on Joseph's door, Joseph operated in truth. He operated in humility. And he remained patient on the Lord to bring his dream to pass. I'm sure that you have some dreams that are in your heart that have not yet come to pass. I know I have some in mind. some of those that maybe your spouse doesn't even know about or your kids don't even know about. Hold on to those dreams. But what are you doing to steward them to come to pass? How are you stewarding your character to carry them? Because see that the Joseph that was receiving the honor, the Joseph that was being bowed down to, he had to be refined. And that journey became necessary to position him for who he was going to be, to steward that calling. That Joseph couldn't have been a man of arrogance. He could not have been a man that was flippant. He had to be a serious steward of the gifts and calling that God had placed on his life. So my question for you is, if God has given you a dream, what are you doing to transform to become the person that can carry that dream? What are you doing to become that steward? Stewardship precedes provision. God puts inside of us what we need to be able to carry that dream out, but it happens before, right? That seed is planted, but it is our job to steward it. Genesis 41, 53 through 57, that's what I would really encourage you to read, but a paraphrase or a shorter version of this is, then the 7 years of plenty, which were in the land of Egypt, ended, and the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, the famine was in all the lands, but in all the land of Egypt, there was bread. See, Joseph's ability to steward his own calling and destiny fed the nations. Your ability to steward your own call and destiny is provision for your family. It is provision for your community. It is provision for your ministries, your careers, whatever it is you are in. You need to recognize that your ability to steward that which God has put inside of you flows out to many. Joseph's impacted nations. What is yours going to impact? Joseph stored up not food for a day, but it says in the scripture that it was like immeasurable. You think at some point during that, those 7 years, maybe on year like 4, he's like, I bet we can stop. No, Joseph kept on. Why? Because Joseph believed the dream, believed that God was speaking. It was that same faith that allowed him that 22 years from the dream to come to pass. So when he heard the dream that was presented to him, he said, we have 7 years, and he acted on it. The dream wasn't just in Joseph's head and his ears and in his heart. It became actionable. It became an action plan. They basically took the vision and here's the plan. Here's how we're going to carry it out. So what have you done with the dreams that God has put in your heart? Are you just sitting on them? Because there are seasons like that, right? It says that like Mary pondered. There are seasons of pondering. I believe that there's seasons on just waiting. And sometimes the birthing room is, well, I shouldn't say sometimes. The birthing room of your dreams and your calling is a private place. It is not a place for everyone. It is a place for you to be, to give birth to what God has called you for. But what comes out of that has the ability, in Joseph's case, to transform the nations. But that place, we have to get to that place, that we can be the men and the women that steward those callings well. So what you are stewarding in secret now could be somebody's lifeline in the future. I've told you just a little bit about my story today, but I hope that it has blessed you. I hope that my testimony has been something that has encouraged something in you that will become a testimony for others. Because see, that's how the kingdom of God works. Story upon story, testimony upon testimony, brick upon brick. We are building together. We are expanding the kingdom together. So in closing, that's what Rabbi always says. My dad always says, as I close, and then there's like a couple closes that come along. But as we wind down today, I have a couple questions for you that I would love for you to lean into. Where are you tempted to promote yourself instead of waiting on God to open the door? Joseph was patient. He waited on God to open the door, but it wasn't passive. It was a waiting in hope and anticipation. What are you stewarding today that is for the future? What is it? Can you identify it? Can you feel that in there? You need to be able to name it and say, okay, I am stewarding this gift and I know it's for the future. And have you allowed your waiting time to become a place of bitterness resentment, or even just passive instead of actively waiting on the Lord. When we're actively waiting on the Lord, we're doing so from a place of hope and joy. We're staying in the Word. We're writing the vision. We're making it plain. We're waiting on the Lord, but it's not just like, I'm not doing nothing. Look at it this way. If God called you to run a marathon, you could sit in your chair and say, okay, let me know when the marathon is. No, you got to train to run the marathon. You got to start little by little, day upon day, discipline upon discipline. If God has put a dream in your heart, how are you running towards it? And remember that this life is truly a marathon, that it is not a sprint, that it is day by day, and it is those disciplines that you follow. I think that there's so much for us to learn from the life of Joseph. But for us today, right now, in the modern, my encouragement to you would be this: walk in patience. Walk in humility, walk in gratitude, and don't forget that what you are stewarding today, that those gifts can be a lifeline for someone in the future. Maybe it's your family, maybe it's your friends, maybe it's a perfect stranger, but steward your gifting well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I look forward to being with you next week, same time, same place. Shalom, friends. Thank you so much for tuning into Generations at the Table and being a part of this journey. I am so excited to share that Generations at the Table is moving over to its own channel. So if you've loved these episodes and I've loved spending this time with you, be sure to follow us there so that you don't miss a thing. Same heart, same message, brand new channel. I can't wait to see you there.